Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features, and much more.
Lockie slowly made his way down the stairs, still dressed in his sister's school uniform. He had hoped to sneak back to his room unnoticed, but it was too late. His mother was sitting in the living room, a stern look on her face. "Lockie, what are you wearing?" she asked, her voice cold and accusatory. Lockie's heart sank as he realized he had been caught. He knew he was in trouble now. I was just trying it on," he stammered, his cheeks flushing with embarrassment. His mother stood up, her eyes narrowing. "Take that off right now," she ordered. Lockie hesitated, his hands trembling as he began to undo the buttons of the shirt. He knew he had done something wrong, but he couldn't explain why he had felt compelled to wear his sister's clothes. "This is not acceptable behavior," his mother continued, her voice rising. "You will not wear women's clothes in this house. Do you understand me?" Lockie nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. He felt ashamed and humiliated, but also a strange sense of excitement and curiosity. He wasn't sure why he had wanted to wear the uniform, but he knew he couldn't stop thinking about it. "Go to your room and change," his mother said, her voice still cold and distant. "We will discuss this further when your father gets home." Lockie turned and walked back up the stairs, his mind racing with conflicting emotions. He knew he had done something wrong, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to it, something he didn't understand. As he closed the door to his room, Lockie knew that this was just the beginning of a long and difficult journey. He had no idea what was in store for him, but he knew it would change his life forever. Lockie sat on his bed, his mind still racing with thoughts and emotions. He knew he was in trouble for crossdressing, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to it, something he didn't understand. A knock on the door startled him, and his mother entered the room. She had a stern look on her face, and Lockie knew that this was not going to be a pleasant conversation. "Lockie, we need to talk about what happened earlier," she said, her voice cold and distant. Lockie nodded, his throat dry with fear. He knew he had done something wrong, but he wasn't sure how to explain his feelings. "I am disappointed in you," his mother continued. "Crossdressing is not acceptable behavior, and I will not tolerate it in this house." Lockie nodded again, feeling smaller and more insignificant with every word his mother spoke. "As a punishment, you will no longer be allowed to wear men's clothing," his mother said, her voice growing more stern. "You will wear your sister's clothes from now on, and you will be treated as a girl in this house." Lockie's heart sank as he realized the gravity of the situation. He was being forced to cross-dress as a form of punishment, and he had no say in the matter. "Do you understand me, Lockie?" his mother asked, her voice cold and accusatory. Lockie nodded, feeling trapped and powerless. He knew he had to comply with his mother's demands, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a long and difficult journey. As his mother left the room, Lockie felt a sense of uncertainty and fear. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew it would be a challenge. He would have to navigate the complexities of cross-dressing and the judgments and prejudices of those around him. But despite the challenges ahead, Lockie couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to it, something he didn't understand. He was being forced to cross-dress, but he couldn't explain why he felt such a strong desire to do so. Few days later, as Lockie sat in front of the mirror, staring at his reflection, he barely recognized the person looking back at him. His hair was styled in loose curls, and his face was made up with makeup. He was wearing a pink blouse and a skirt, and his feet were encased in a pair of high heels. It had been a few days since his mother had forced him to cross-dress, and Lockie was still getting used to his new identity. He felt awkward and self-conscious, unsure of how to move or behave as a girl. He stood up, wobbling on his heels as he made his way over to his dresser. He opened the drawer, pulling out a pair of panties and a bra. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether he was ready to take this next step. But he knew he had no choice. His mother had made it clear that he was to embrace his new identity as a sissy, and he had no say in the matter. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He slipped on the panties, feeling the fabric brush against his skin. He put on the bra, adjusting it to fit his chest. He looked at himself in the mirror again, feeling a mix of emotions. He was embarrassed and humiliated, but he also felt a strange sense of excitement and curiosity. He didn't understand why he felt this way, but he couldn't deny the feelings. He spent the rest of the day trying to navigate his new identity, struggling with the physical challenges of living as a woman. He found the clothes uncomfortable and restrictive, and he had trouble moving in the heels. The next day, Lockie stood at the bus stop, his heart racing with fear and anxiety. He was wearing his Sissy uniform, the same one he had been forced to wear at home. He knew he was going to face ridicule and discrimination from his peers, but he had no choice. His mother had made it clear that he was to attend school in his new identity, and he had no say in the matter. As the bus approached, Lockie felt his stomach churn with dread. He knew what was waiting for him on the other side, and he wasn't sure if he was ready to face it. He made his way to his seat, trying to ignore the stares and whispers of his classmates. He could feel the tension in the air, and he knew that it was only a matter of time before the insults and jokes started. Sure enough, as soon as the bus pulled away from the stop, the insults began. Lockie was called names and laughed at, and he could feel his face growing hot with embarrassment. He tried to ignore it, but it was hard. He had never felt so humiliated and powerless. As the day wore on, the insults and jokes continued. Lockie felt like he was the butt of everyone's joke, and he couldn't wait for the day to be over. But despite the ridicule and discrimination, Lockie couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to it, something he didn't understand. He had been living as a sissy for a few weeks now, and he was still struggling to come to terms with his new identity. On the one hand, he felt humiliated and ashamed. He was being forced to cross-dress and act like a girl, and he didn't understand why. He didn't want to be a sissy, and he resented his mother for making him do it. On the other hand, he couldn't deny the feelings of arousal and excitement that he sometimes felt. There was something about wearing women's clothes and acting like a girl that he found intriguing and alluring. He didn't understand why he felt this way, but he couldn't deny the feelings. Lockie sighed, feeling torn and conflicted. He didn't know what to do, and he didn't know how to reconcile his conflicting emotions. He stood up, walking over to his dresser. He opened the drawer, pulling out a pair of panties and a bra. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of whether he was ready to take this next step. But despite his reservations, Lockie found himself slipping on the panties and putting on the bra. He looked at himself in the mirror, feeling a mix of emotions. He was embarrassed and humiliated, but he also felt a strange sense of excitement and curiosity. He didn't understand why he felt this way, but he couldn't deny the feelings. He had been struggling with his new identity as a sissy for weeks, torn between his feelings of humiliation and shame and his growing sense of excitement and curiosity. But as he looked at himself in the mirror, he realized that he had made a decision. He was going to embrace his new identity as a sissy, and he was going to explore his desires and find a greater sense of acceptance and confidence. He stood up, walking over to his dresser. He opened the drawer, pulling out a selection of women's clothing. He smiled, feeling a sense of excitement and anticipation as he looked at the clothes. He spent the next hour trying on different outfits, experimenting with different styles and looks. He felt a sense of freedom and liberation as he tried on each outfit, and he knew that he had made the right decision. As he looked at himself in the mirror, dressed in a cute sundress and a pair of sandals, Lockie felt a sense of pride and confidence. He was a sissy, and he was proud of it. He knew that there would still be challenges and obstacles ahead, but he was ready to face them. He was embracing his new identity, and he was determined to find a greater sense of acceptance and confidence. Lockie had been living as a sissy for several months now, and he had grown accustomed to his new identity. He had embraced his desires and found a greater sense of acceptance and confidence, and he was happy. But his happiness was short-lived, as his mother's controlling and abusive behavior began to escalate. She had always been strict and demanding, but now she was becoming increasingly aggressive and hostile. Lockie tried to ignore it, hoping that things would get better on their own. But things only seemed to get worse. His mother's insults and abuse became more frequent and more severe, and Lockie felt like he was walking on eggshells. He knew he had to do something, but he didn't know what. He was trapped in a toxic and abusive environment, and he didn't know how to escape. But then, one day, something snapped. Lockie had had enough of his mother's abuse and control, and he knew he had to take a stand. He confronted his mother, telling her that he was no longer going to tolerate her abuse and control. He told her that he was a sissy, and that he was proud of it. He told her that he was going to live his life on his own terms, and that she had no say in the matter. His mother was shocked and outraged, and she lashed out at Lockie in a fit of rage. She screamed and yelled, threatening and insulting him. But Lockie stood his ground, refusing to back down. He spent weeks trying to find a way to escape his mother's control, but it seemed impossible. She was always watching him, always waiting for him to slip up. But then, one day, Lockie had an idea. He would run away, escape his mother's control and start a new life. He spent the next few days making plans, gathering supplies and waiting for the right moment. He knew it was risky, but he was willing to take the chance. Finally, the day arrived. Lockie packed a small bag, put on his sissy clothes, and snuck out of the house in the early hours of the morning. He felt a sense of freedom and excitement as he ran away, knowing that he was finally taking control of his own life. He knew there would be challenges and obstacles ahead, but he was ready to face them.